The ship drifted in silence above the blue planet. From the outside, it looked like a shard of black glass hidden against the void. Inside, a young alien woman sat in a chamber full of glowing screens. Her name was Syria. Her people, the Kareth, had sent her here for a mission she could not refuse. The Council of Kareth believed humans were dangerous, not because of their numbers, not because of their weapons, but because of something deeper, something no scanner could measure. Humans were stubborn, unpredictable, and able to rise even when crushed. The Kareth feared this hidden strength, a strength they called the Spark. Syria had been trained since childhood to spy, to blend in, to gather secrets. She was chosen because she could pass as human with only small adjustments. A mask of soft skin covered her true features, hiding the faint silver markings of her kind. She could walk among humans without suspicion. That was her task, to live among them, to watch one human closely, and to learn what made his kind so dangerous. The chosen human was named Daniel Hayes. He was not a soldier, not a leader, not a scientist of great fame. To the human world, he was ordinary, an engineer working at a starport in a small colony city. But the Council believed ordinary humans were the most dangerous. Leaders could be predicted, soldiers could be stopped, but the ordinary ones carried the spark most strongly. Syria had read his files 100 times. Age 31. Occupation, mechanic. Record clean. Family, none nearby. A perfect target for close observation. Her orders were clear. Watch him, report everything, and never get involved. The shuttle carried her down through the clouds. She wore the simple clothes of the colony, her false skin warm against the sunlight. From above, the colony looked small, a cluster of buildings around a landing field where ships rose and landed like silver birds. Humans moved everywhere, carrying crates, shouting orders, laughing and arguing. Their energy surprised her. The Kareth were calm, measured, controlled. Humans burned like fire. She stepped off the shuttle with her forged identity ready. To them, she was Siri, a new worker applying for a job in the starport. The colony needed hands, and humans rarely questioned someone willing to work. Within hours, she was walking among them, carrying tools, listening to their voices, pretending to be one of them. That evening, she saw Daniel for the first time. He was bent over an engine core, sleeves rolled up, hands dark with grease. Sparks flew as he worked, but he did not flinch. His eyes were focused, steady, and his movements sure. Syria paused, studying him carefully. She expected to see weakness, clumsiness, or the kind of pride her teachers had described. Instead, she saw patience, precision, care. "Hey, you must be the new tech," Daniel said without looking up. His voice was steady, friendly. "Grab that stabilizer coil, would you?" "The one on the left." For a moment, Syria froze. No one had spoken to her so casually before. Among the Kareth, voices were cold, words chosen like blades, but this human spoke to her as if she belonged. She nodded quickly, picked up the coil, and handed it to him. "Thanks," he said, flashing a quick smile before returning to work. That smile unsettled her more than she expected. Days passed. Syria followed her orders, watching Daniel in every detail. She learned his routine, how he started his shift early, how he stayed late to help others, how he shared food with younger workers who had little. He laughed often, even when work was hard. He treated every machine as if it had value, every person as if they mattered. At night, in her hidden quarters, Syria sent coded reports back to her people. But she noticed her reports were changing. At first, she wrote about his skills, his habits, his flaws. But soon her words became uncertain. She described his kindness, his strange ability to make others work harder just by being near, his habit of never giving up even when repairs seemed hopeless. She caught herself writing these things, then erasing them. The council would not want such details. They wanted proof of danger, not admiration. One evening, a storm swept over the colony. The landing field shook with wind, and one of the cargo lifters tipped dangerously, threatening to crush workers beneath it. Syria saw it happen. She stood frozen, calculating how far she was from cover, how easily she could survive if she let events unfold. Her mission demanded she stay hidden, unnoticed. But Daniel ran into the storm without hesitation. He threw himself against the lifter, shouting for others to help. Humans rushed to his side, pushing together, straining against the weight. The lifter shuddered, then slowly shifted back to balance. The workers cheered, soaked with rain. Daniel only wiped his face and laughed as if it had been nothing. Syria stood in silence, heart pounding. Her people would call such an act foolish, reckless. but she could not deny what she had seen. He had risked himself for others without thought, and others had followed his lead, drawn to his courage like metal to a magnet. That night, when she sat before her screen to write her report, she found her hands trembling. How could she describe what she had seen? If she told the truth, the council would use it as proof that humans were dangerous. If she lied, she betrayed her duty. For the first time, she hesitated, unsure of who she was serving. Weeks turned into months. Saria's disguise held, and no one questioned her presence. She became part of the starport crew, silent but dependable. Daniel spoke to her often, sometimes about work, sometimes about small things, weather, food, stories of his childhood. She listened carefully, recording everything, but she found herself enjoying his words. She even caught herself smiling once when he made a joke. It startled her that such a simple sound could feel so strange and warm. One night, as she walked back to her quarters, she paused at the edge of the landing field. The stars stretched across the sky, endless and cold. Her people believed the stars were silent, unchanging. But humans saw them as something else, as destinations, as dreams, as a challenge. Daniel had told her once, "Every star out there is waiting for us. We just have to be brave enough to reach them." That sentence stayed with her. Brave enough. The Kareth did not speak of bravery. They spoke of control, of strategy, of safety. Yet here was a human who believed the universe was not something to fear, but something to chase. Saria realized then that her mission was no longer simple. Watching him had changed her. The council had sent her to find weakness. Instead, she was seeing strength. Not the kind that came from weapons or power, but from something deeper, the spark they feared so much, and though she did not know it yet, the choices she made from this point forward would change her life, and perhaps the fate of both their peoples. Days after the storm, Saria's life had settled into a strange rhythm. She continued her mission, observing Daniel, learning his habits and reporting back to the council. Yet every day she felt the invisible weight of conflict pressing on her. She had been trained to spy without emotion, to stay detached, to see humans as data points. But the longer she stayed with Daniel, the harder it became to maintain that distance. Daniel noticed her more often now. He was curious, not suspicious. Curiosity was natural for humans. He asked her questions about her past, her hobbies, her preferences. Saria answered carefully, revealing just enough to appear human but never enough to expose herself. Still, each conversation left her feeling a little exposed, a little human. The more she pretended, the more she wanted to belong. One afternoon, Daniel asked her to help repair a starship engine. It was a complicated task, one that would take hours. As they worked side by side, Saria observed his skill up close. His hands were steady, precise, and almost hypnotic as he adjusted the circuits and calibrated the engine. He muttered under his breath, explaining his thought process aloud. Even the small mistakes he corrected were deliberate, showing patience and resilience. "Here," he said, handing her a delicate component. "This part is sensitive. Don't rush it. Treat it like it's alive." Saria blinked. Alive? She had heard the phrase before, but humans seemed to believe it literally. Machines did not live. They did not breathe. Yet Daniel's care, his attention, his respect, it made her wonder whether humans treated life differently. Perhaps their spark was not only in themselves, but in the way they valued everything around them. That evening, Saria returned to her quarters, tired but thoughtful. She sat in front of her communication device and typed her report. Normally, it was precise and cold, full of observations. Human demonstrates skill in engine repair. Routine behaviors predictable. No immediate threat observed. Tonight, though, she hesitated. She paused, then wrote instead. Human demonstrates qualities unusual for species. Courage, care, leadership, by example. Further observation recommended. She knew the council would consider this both alarming and useful. They would not understand the subtlety, the warmth she felt, the admiration growing in her chest. The next week brought danger that tested her growing connection with Daniel. A shipment of rare energy cells was being transported through the city, and a rival corporation attempted a sabotage. Explosions rocked the street near the starport, sending panicked humans running in all directions. Saria's training kicked in immediately. She ducked behind a crate, watching, recording every move. But when she saw Daniel sprinting toward the chaos without hesitation, something inside her shifted. "Sari," he shouted, not seeing the shadows that hid her. "Over here! Help me!" The weeks passed quietly at first. But the tension inside Saria grew like a storm ready to break. Every day with Daniel made her mission harder. She was supposed to remain detached, to observe, to report. Yet every laugh, every shared moment, and every act of kindness drew her closer to him. The line between spy and companion blurred, and she felt it slipping with every heartbeat. Daniel did not notice the full weight of her inner struggle. He was kind, curious, and patient, yet completely unaware of the true danger that surrounded them both. He treated her as he treated everyone else, with respect, humor, and trust. He never questioned her past or her skills. He simply included her, and that inclusion, simple as it seemed, was changing her in ways she did not expect. One morning, the starport was unusually busy. A freighter from a distant system had docked late and its crew needed urgent repairs. Daniel was called away, leaving Saria to manage the smaller machines on her own. She moved quickly, adjusting parts, repairing circuits, and checking safety protocols. The work was routine, but her thoughts kept drifting to Daniel. She wondered if he had eaten, if he was safe, if he thought of her at all. Such questions were foreign to her species. Kareth did not dwell on feelings, they analyzed and acted. Yet she could not stop herself. Humans were changing her. That evening, Daniel returned. He smelled of engine oil and the faint sweetness of human food. His smile lit up the workshop. "You've done great today," he said. "Everything is running perfectly." Saria nodded, saying nothing. Words felt inadequate. His praise should have been irrelevant to her mission. Yet it felt like sunlight on frozen ground. For the first time, she realized that she craved his approval not for duty but for herself. A few days later, the bond between them deepened during an unexpected event. A minor accident occurred in the storage area. Crates fell from a shelf, threatening to crush a young worker. Saria was nearby, ready to watch and report, but instinct, something she could not explain, propelled her forward. She grabbed the worker and pulled him away just as the crates crashed to the floor. Daniel arrived moments later, alarmed and grateful. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking at both Saria and the boy. "I'm fine," she said, steadying her breath. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You saved him." That was brave. The word echoed in her mind, brave. Kareth valued strategy, precision, survival, but never courage expressed so openly for the sake of others. Her people would have considered such reckless action foolish. Yet Daniel spoke at his praise as if it were natural to act for others. That night, when she reported the incident to the council, she minimized her involvement. But she could not minimize what she felt. Pride, relief, warmth. It all collided inside her. For the first time, she questioned her loyalty. She had come to spy, to observe a threat. But now she wondered whether humans were a threat or a revelation. As days turned into weeks, Saria and Daniel shared more small moments that quietly built their connection. He taught her how to calibrate an engine for efficiency, how to spot a minor flaw before it became a disaster, and even how to adjust power cores for unusual energy demands. She noticed his patience, his curiosity, and his ability to remain calm under pressure. He also shared stories about his life, his childhood on the colony, memories of a small family that had long since moved away, and his dream of seeing the stars beyond their system. Saria listened closely, storing each detail in her mind. She had learned to read humans, to understand their behaviors, but these personal stories were different. They revealed depth, resilience, and a hope that even the Kareth could not destroy. One night, after a long day of repairs, Daniel invited her to sit outside. The colony was quiet, the sun dipping below the horizon in shades of orange and purple. Stars appeared, twinkling faintly against the darkening sky. "Have you ever seen this view from your homeworld?" Daniel asked softly. Saria shook her head. "No, not like this," he gestured toward the horizon. "When I look at the stars, I think about possibilities, about what could be. Life isn't just surviving, it's reaching for something beyond yourself." Saria stared at the stars, feeling a strange tug inside. Kareth never spoke of dreams. They spoke of strategy, missions, and survival. Yet here she was, a Kareth, contemplating possibilities, imagining a future beyond orders and duties. "I understand," she whispered, though she barely understood herself. Daniel reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, unassuming, yet it made her pulse quicken. The council would have considered such closeness dangerous, not for the human, but for her. Emotions made a spy unreliable, yet she could not pull away. She wanted to stay in that moment even as her mind screamed caution. The true test came unexpectedly. One evening, as they were working together on a damaged transport unit, a sudden energy surge caused a small explosion. Sparks flew, and the unit shuddered violently. Daniel froze for a heartbeat and Syria reacted instantly. She leapt forward, stabilizing the unit with her hands, guiding Daniel and nearby workers away from harm. The explosion was minor, and no one was hurt. But Daniel looked at her with astonishment.
Syria, and that was incredible.
You reacted faster than anyone I've ever seen. Syria forced a smile, though inside fear and exhilaration mixed. Her training had prepared her for quick actions, but never had she felt so connected to someone she was supposed to spy on. She had risked herself not for duty, not for the council, but for him. That night, her reports reflected the facts, carefully worded. But her mind kept replaying the incident. She could not stop thinking about Daniel's expression, the warmth in his eyes, the admiration that had nothing to do with her mission. She realized then that she was no longer observing a subject. She was involved, emotionally, personally, dangerously. As the bond grew, so did the inner conflict. Syria began to understand that her mission had consequences far beyond her original orders. If her people discovered her feelings, if they saw her attachment to Daniel, it could mean exile, or worse. Yet she could not leave. Every interaction, every shared laugh, every small act of kindness drew her further into a web of connection she did not know how to escape. She also began to notice changes in herself, subtle, disquieting changes. She felt warmth where there should have been detachment. She found joy in small human moments. She began to wonder what it would mean if she could stay with him, if she could belong somewhere beyond duty and loyalty. Her reports became more complex, filled with data, but carefully omitting the truth of her feelings. She wrote about his skills, his courage, his leadership, but she could not write about the growing respect, the admiration, the care. That part was hers alone, and it terrified her. One evening, as she prepared to send her nightly report, her mind drifted to a thought she could not ignore. I am becoming part of his world. I am no longer an observer, and I do not want to leave. That thought shook her to the core. The council had sent her to spy, to measure, to serve. Instead, she was learning what it meant to feel, to care, and to bond with a human. The spark the Kareth feared was not just in Daniel. It was in her too, growing, unrelenting, and unstoppable. Syria knew that soon she would face a choice: remain loyal to her people, or embrace the bond that had changed her completely. And when that time came, she would have no easy answers. But for now, under the soft glow of human lights and the quiet watch of distant stars, Syria let herself sit beside Daniel, sharing a silent, unspoken understanding. They were connected more deeply than either could say, and for the first time Syria felt the dangerous, thrilling, impossible pull of human trust, and maybe even something stronger. Syria's days with Daniel had grown longer, closer and far more dangerous than she could have imagined. The initial mission, quietly observe, report, and never interfere, was slipping further from her grasp. Every moment spent with him added weight to her heart, and yet every interaction also deepened her fear. The Kareth would never allow this. Her attachment was a betrayal in their eyes, a threat to her people's order and control. She awoke early that morning, her mind already racing. She moved through the starport quietly, avoiding the other workers while her thoughts lingered on the night before. Daniel had spoken about the upcoming energy shipment, casually mentioning that a human research team would be inspecting new engines. Normally, such a statement would be routine data. Today, however, it felt urgent. Her pulse quickened, not with fear for herself, but with concern for him. When she arrived at the workshop, Daniel was already there, tinkering with a complex engine core. His hands moved quickly, carefully, balancing speed with precision. Syria watched him, her chest tightening. The humans called it worry, a feeling she had begun to understand in herself. She wanted to protect him, not because the council had ordered it, but because she genuinely cared. "Good morning," Daniel said, smiling. "You're here early. I need your help with this new core. It's delicate and I don't want to risk a mistake." Syria nodded. "I'll help," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. Inside, her heart was racing. She had become more than an observer. She had become part of his life, and she feared what that meant. As they worked together, an unexpected intimacy developed. Hands brushing while adjusting tiny components. Shared laughter when a minor miscalculation caused sparks to fly. Quiet conven over repair. The warning from the council had changed everything. Syria could no longer remain at ease. No longer pretend that her mission was just observation. Every movement, every glance, every small mistake could alert the Kareth to her growing attachment to Daniel and to the child she carried. She felt the walls closing in. The stars above seemed distant, cold, and indifferent. Yet one thought kept her moving. She would protect Daniel and the life within her no matter the cost. The first sign of trouble came in the early hours of the morning. A shadow moved across the starport perimeter, far too precise to be a human worker. Syria noticed it while preparing for her day. Her senses, honed by years of Kareth training, detected the faint hum of cloaked surveillance. "They're here," she whispered to herself, her pulse quickening. She had expected detection, but seeing proof made her stomach tighten. Her people were precise hunters. If they had tracked her, there was no telling what lengths they would go to retrieve her or eliminate the child. Daniel arrived moments later, unaware of the danger. "Syria, you look worried." "Is something wrong?" Syria hesitated. She could not tell him the truth, not yet. "I think someone might be watching the perimeter," she said carefully, keeping her voice calm. She could feel the surge of fear mixed with determination. "We should be cautious today." Daniel frowned but trusted her judgment. Humans were intuitive, but they could not perceive Kareth methods. "Okay, we'll be careful," he said, turning back to the engines. He adjusted parts, oblivious to the hunters closing in on them. Syria's mind raced. They could not remain in the city. Every moment they stayed, the Kareth could strike. She began planning their escape, knowing that speed and secrecy were their only allies. By midday, the first confrontation occurred. While Daniel tested a repaired engine in the outer hangar, Syria spotted 3 Kareth agents silently entering the starport. Their cloaks shimmered with advanced camouflage, making them nearly invisible. Syria acted immediately. "Daniel, follow me," she ordered, pulling him toward a side exit. Her voice was firm, no hint of hesitation. The human blinked, startled by her urgency. "What's happening?" "Danger. Now," she said, her hands moving quickly to block the agent's line of sight. They ran through the narrow corridors, weaving between machinery and crates. Syria led Daniel to a maintenance shaft, a hidden route only she knew from her early observations. The Kareth agents pursued, using advanced tracking devices that pulsed faintly with energy. Every step was calculated. Syria felt the familiar thrill of evasion, honed over years of training, but this time she was not alone. She was responsible for another life. Daniel struggled to keep pace but followed without question. His trust in her, complete and unquestioning, surprised her. Humans were resilient in ways her people did not understand. He asked no questions, argued no commands. He simply ran. And she realized that part of the spark the council feared was not just survival. It was trust and courage in the face of danger. The pursuit led them outside the city. Syria activated a small transport pod she had prepared in secret, a relic from her own people modified to appear human-made. She helped Daniel inside, closing the door as the Kareth agents approached, their cloaks shimmering with energy. The pod lifted off just as energy pulses from the agents slammed into the ground nearby. Sparks flew and debris scattered as the agents attempted to immobilize the pod. Syria guided the controls, navigating through the city's shipping lanes, avoiding traffic, and evading pursuit with skill that Daniel could not fully comprehend. "You're incredible," he said breathlessly, gripping the seat. "How do you know all this?" Syria's jaw tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, the council, her training, the child, but she could not. The words would make them targets again. "I've seen a lot," she said finally, keeping her voice steady. Her hands moved over the controls with precision, every instinct focused on safety. Daniel's eyes widened with admiration, not realizing the true depth of her knowledge. But in that moment, admiration was enough. It reminded her why she had to protect them, both him and the life growing inside her. They reached a remote system on the outskirts of human-controlled space. Syria landed the pod in a hidden canyon, where no Kareth agent could easily track them. The air was thin, crisp, and cold. For the first time in days, Syria allowed herself to breathe. Daniel turned to her. "Siri, what's really going on? Why are we being chased? Who wants to hurt us?" Syria hesitated. Her mind swirled with answers she could not give. "It's Complicated, she said finally, keeping her voice calm. She avoided his gaze, knowing the moment she revealed the truth, the danger would grow even more. He studied her closely. Humans had a way of sensing truth even in lies. "You can tell me," he said softly. "I won't run. I won't leave you." Her heart ached. She wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to share her fears, her secret, the life growing inside her. But the consequences of revelation were too great. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain silent. "Not yet," she whispered. "We need to stay safe first." Daniel nodded reluctantly, trusting her judgment again. He still did not know the danger fully, but his loyalty to her, and to the bond they had formed, was unshakable. For days they hid in the remote canyon, living quietly but always alert. Syria taught Daniel how to avoid Kareth detection, how to move silently, and how to anticipate danger before it arrived. He absorbed every lesson, adapting quickly in a way that reminded her again why humans were feared. During their time together, they shared small moments of humanity. Daniel cooked simple meals, teaching Syria the subtle joys of taste, smell, and conversation. They laughed at minor mistakes, shared stories of their past, and quietly learned to trust one another in ways that transcended words. Each moment strengthened their bond, preparing them for the inevitable confrontation that Syria knew was coming. Yet the shadow of danger never lifted. The Kareth were relentless. Scans showed their agents moving closer, calculating their moves with deadly precision. Syria knew that staying in one place too long would be fatal. They would need to move again, find another hiding place, or risk capture. Every decision weighed heavily. Every choice carried consequences, not just for herself, but for Daniel, and for the life she carried. The responsibility was immense, but Syria did not waver. The spark she had discovered, the courage and connection she had seen in humans, gave her strength. One night, as they watched the stars together from a rocky outcrop, Daniel spoke softly. "Siri, I don't know exactly what's happening, but I do know this: you're brave, smarter than anyone I've met, and I trust you. Always." Syria's chest tightened. Trust. Human trust was a weapon, a shield, and a bond all in one. She realized fully then that the Council's fear of humans was not only about power, it was about heart, connection, and the unbreakable spirit that refused to bow, even in the face of superior technology. She reached for his hand, briefly, a small gesture but full of meaning. He grasped it gently, understanding without words. For a moment, the dangers of the universe faded. The chase, the Council, the unknown, all of it could wait. But Syria knew they could not hide forever. The Council would not relent. Their mission, their pursuit, and the secret of the child growing inside her meant that the final confrontation was inevitable. The question was not if, but when. And when that moment came, Syria vowed that they would face it together. Not as spy and subject, not as human and alien, but as partners united by choice, courage, and an unbreakable bond. The Kareth were hunting them, but they would not be found, not easily. Humanity, and the spark that even the stars seemed to watch with awe, would not be underestimated. The canyon was quiet, but Syria knew it was only a matter of time before the Kareth found them. Every night she monitored the horizon, scanning for cloaked ships or energy signatures. The Council's agents were relentless, and they would not tolerate her defiance. She felt the child moving inside her, a gentle rhythm that reminded her of what she was fighting for. Protecting Daniel in this new life had become her purpose, stronger than any orders the Council could give. Daniel was aware of the danger, but had begun to trust Syria's judgment completely. He had adapted quickly to life in hiding, learning how to evade detection, how to anticipate threats, and how to survive in ways he had never imagined. Yet he never complained. He did not see Syria as strange or alien. He saw her as a partner, someone he could rely on. "Do you think they'll come tonight?" he asked softly, sitting beside her on the rocky outcrop. Syria shook her head. "I don't know. But we have to be ready. The Council will not stop until they find us." Her hand rested instinctively on her abdomen. The child was growing stronger, and that alone made the stakes higher. Daniel's hand found hers. "We'll face them together," he said. No matter what. Her heart clenched. The human's courage was more than physical. It was emotional, unyielding, and inspiring. She had begun to understand why her people feared humans. It was not just their unpredictability, but their ability to act with love, loyalty, and unshakable courage. The attack came just after midnight. A Kareth ship dropped silently into the canyon, almost invisible against the rocky terrain. Syria's sensors immediately detected multiple boarding parties, sleek and dangerous, moving toward their hiding place. "They're here," she whispered, her steady despite the adrena.